So what we're trying to do is to figure out how to do state machines, and I'll start with the if statement version. So first of all, we need to have some kind of variable, just as you mentioned before. Let's just call it states or state, and maybe let's just start in state 0. So we declare that the default state is 0. Then we implement the setup and draw. Alright, then what we need to do is somehow to make some if logic that based on the variable can do different things. So one thing could be to say if state is equal 0, we want to draw something on the screen. Before we do that, I think we'll just set a size. So let's just go with a text. So before I run it, I'll also just set increase the text size. Okay, so what we have here is a small program that starts by declaring a variable. It's called state with the value 0 in it. Then it does some stuff in the setup, and then inside draw we're going to check if the state is 0. We want to draw this text here. So basically our expectation is that it draws the text on the screen, right? So that works. I think we can do it bigger than that. Okay. So what I want to do is to add different stages. So then I can do an else if and say if the state is not 0, then I want to check if it's something else. Maybe 1 could be the next one, right? Then I want to run some other code. Second state. So there's nothing new in this. So per default it's still 0, so we get the first one. But of course if we change our variable to 1, we're going to get the second one instead, right? And we can do a third state. We can do as many states as we feel like this way. Just tell it then whenever state is 2, we're in the third state. I can check if that works. Third state. And then now we have a small state machine with 3 states. What we also have is that if the state becomes anything but 0, 1 or 2, nothing happens, of course, because we're outside the scope of what we're actually checking in these if statements. So what I'm getting at here is that if you make a program, let's say a game, you build it up around the structure, and so in here you could add the start screen, all the code that has to do with what should be in the start screen. Inside here you could add everything that had to do with playing the game. And inside here you could add everything that has to do with game over. So the last thing that you need to keep track on here is, of course, just the fact that we have the state machine here doesn't make a change between the states, right? So right now we've been doing this manually up here, but the whole deal is, of course, we need to change between the states here. So in my case here, I could implement key released maybe. And just say whenever I release a key, I wanna add 1 to the state. So if it's 0, it becomes 1. If it's 1, it becomes 2. Then I can walk through the different states. When I do that, I also wanna add a background here just to refresh draw. It's like this. So I added background and draw, and I implemented the key release function that counts up the state. So what I have now is the first state, and if I press a key and release it, I have the second state. I press a key and release it, I have the third state. So if you need to relate that to your game, it could be something like that in the first, we just start in the first state, of course, and then if you have a game where you want to start when you press enter, then you need to make some condition. Let's say if a key is released and enter is pressed, then we move from the first state to the second state. And inside the second state, this is where the game is being played. So the moment that we move from the second state to the third state is actually the moment when we lose the game. So we need to look inside the code and see where is it actually I can see that I'm losing the game here. If we take the smiley game, that could be the smiley jumps up, and when it jumps back down, it collides with the enemy or something like that. So that's the collision that would be the losing state, right? It could be other examples too, but the point is that in your case in the games, it won't necessarily make sense just to use a key release to count through the stages. That's not the point. You need to figure out inside your code how to change from one state to another. Can you see where this is applicable? A way of structuring that you could. So for now, you could take your whatever game you have been working on and put all the code for the game inside here, and then add some graphics here for the starting screen, and make sure that whenever we are in this state, we change to this state if a key is pressed. We can just try to build the first step of that here. So instead of just counting up states here, so what I would do then, if I just want to go from the first state to the second state, then I want to start by actually checking then I want to check if state is 0, that's the first state, and a key is released, then I want to move to the second state. I just define that the place where I move to the second state can only happen if I'm already in the first state. So because otherwise we would end up other places in the program where we could change to that state too. So what you will see here is that Now I'm in the first state. I can press a key, move to the second state. But I can't go any further because the idea is now that this is where the game is played. So in order to actually move to the first state, I would have to make the game and make sure that I only move to the third state whenever the game is lost. If we wanna pretend that the game is lost by some other function, we could do something like this. So we check if the state is 1 and the mouse is released, then we want to go to the last state. But remember, this is this would normally happen within state 1 playing the game. This is just an example of another way of going. So we have all the states. So what you see is right now I click my mouse, nothing really happens because I'm in the first state, so I can't go to the last state from here. But if I press a key and go to the second state, then I'm in the game part. Then the idea is that I'm playing the game, and at some point something happens, and in our case here we just cheated a little bit by making a mouse release function that goes from the second state to the third. You have a question? Yeah.
Not really a question, but like if you add some HP counter and like every time you jump, you break some HP, then we have like a level up kind of thing going on with this statement or state.
Yeah, you're thinking like outside. So if you have a game where you earn experience points based on how good you play the game each time or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Then you could have a
State, like,
yeah.
You switch states, like, like states will suddenly be like stages.
Yeah.
You can do that, right?
You could have you could have inside your game, the inside the game part.
Like maybe different, maybe the enemy will suddenly go faster.
So yeah, so when you're inside this state, if we think a little bit further, that how can we use the fact that you can play the game again or something like that to affect the game, then you could inside here define something about based on how many points you earn, the game will be this much harder next time or something like that. That's just code that is inside the second state where the game is. You just need to remember what happened earlier, right? So it's the same thing that maybe if you have a game, the games we've been doing now only have one state, like on one level, let's call it a level. So if you implement your game code in a way so it have different levels, of course all of that will also happen inside the second stage, because everything related to the game is inside that stage. The other stuff is just what happens before you play the game and what happens after you play the game. So everything related to the game is inside here. Of course, still, if you, for the game, need to have global variables and stuff like that, you put them in the top still. But the code that you normally would execute inside draw would happen inside here. Okay? Are you ready to see the next version of how to do this? Let's do that.